They buried it, pulled it from the air, and acted like it never existed. One episode of Married with Children was too much to handle, even for a show known for pushing limits. For decades, it stayed hidden, never broadcast, never released. Now it's back. What made this episode so extreme that it couldn't air in the 1990s? Why did it cross a line that even the network wouldn't tolerate? This is the lost episode they tried to erase, one that tested the limits of TV then and still raises eyebrows today. Here's what they didn't want you to see. The sitcom that broke all rules in the late 1980s, American television was dominated by sanitized family comedies. Shows such as Full House, The Cosby Show, and Family Ties painted portraits of loving, well-adjusted families facing minor struggles that were neatly resolved in 22 minutes. It was a formula audiences were used to, but it was also one that many were beginning to tire of. Enter Married with Children, a gleefully subversive sitcom that did more than break the mold. It torched it, danced on the ashes, and handed viewers something they'd never seen before. Premiering in 1987 on the then-fledgling Fox network, Married with Children flipped the American sitcom on its head. Al Bundy wasn't a sensitive dad trying to understand his kids. He was a bitter shoe salesman who hated his job, loathed his marriage, and constantly dreamed of the life he never had. Peg wasn't the doting housewife. She was a chain-watching TV addict who rarely cooked, never cleaned, and lived for shopping sprees. Their kids, Kelly and Bud, weren't adorable troublemakers. They were selfish, conniving, and proudly lazy. And that was exactly the point. Right from the very first episode, Married with Children broadcast the clear message. This is not a show about idealized families, but about dysfunction and disappointment, and the kind of brutal honesty in which no one had dared to venture before in primetime comedy. No soft piano music moments, no moral signs at the end. Just fat jokes, dirty jokes, poverty jokes, an unapologetic tone that dared audiences to laugh at things polite society pretended not to see. There were a million laughs. The show became a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. It became the voice of a cynical, working-class humor that for many Americans felt almost palpable. Al Bundy's tirades against miserable customers and his one-minute glory from high school football hit home. Peg refusing to live up to an obedient housewife felt like rebellion in disguise. Bud's naughty one-liners and Kelly's blissful ignorance are exaggerated, but strangely believable, and that their greatest strength mocked everyone, men, women, children, neighbors, and especially themselves, made the whole program really interesting. But that same sharp edge, which made Married with Children one of the most prized TV shows, is also the sharp edge that made it one of the most controversial shows on television. Critics derided it as crude and irresponsible. Religious groups protested its subject matter. Politicians spoke of it as a case in point of cultural decline. Network censors? They were always on the alert. Scripts were often flagged. Jokes were rewritten. SEQ cut. Still, every single week, Married with Children pushed the line. But a censor, a silent gauge, was secretly embedded within the show, a prohibited guilt line guarded by chaos behind the scenes. They could make innuendos about hooking up and even dirty suggestions. However, if a storyline went too real, too raw, or too uncomfortable, it would surely risk being squashed altogether. The outrage that erupted when the script leaked wasn't just about jokes. It was about what the episode exposed. The episode they refused to air the episode was called I'll See You in Court. It was fully produced during the third season of Married with Children and scheduled to air in 1989. Cast and crew had no idea it would be different from any other outrageous entry in the series. It followed the standard formula. A little hooking up, a little scandal, a few wildly inappropriate punchlines, and plenty of Bundy bitterness. But this time, something tipped the balance, and when the episode made its way to Fox executives, alarm bells rang immediately. On paper, the plot sounded like a typical Bundy misadventure. Al and Peg decide to spice up their stale love life by checking into a seedy motel for a romantic escape. What they don't know is the motel secretly records guests through hidden cameras. Later, they discover the videotape of their night together has been viewed and possibly distributed without their consent. In true Bundy fashion, they decide to sue the motel. But instead of justice, they find more humiliation when they learn they aren't the only victims. Their neighbors, the Rhodes, went to the same motel and were recorded too. It's another courtroom drama with testaments so graphic they step into crude misunderstanding and jokes so awkward that even devoted fans of Married with Children must wince. The show runs through the theme of intimate privacy and exploitation, but does not keep a straight face about it. It is all just slapstick from there. Yet this one came terribly close to crossing the line for the time. Being secretly videotaped during lovemaking was not just titillating, it was loaded with legal and moral issues. A long time ago, before social media and viral leaks, when every hotel had signs proclaiming surveillance, the plot hit a nerve. Consent, voyeurism, and public exposure were topics that were seldom brought up in the TV sitcom world. This was different. Even in a sitcom where Peg regularly joked about cutting Al off, the husband always belittling his customers. Fox was just a couple of years old as a network, still trying to claw its way into the more traditional broadcasters' fraternity. An edgy, countercultural image was the basis of its brand, but it was also heavily dependent on advertising dollars, and this episode was a landmine. Internal memos indicate that a number of ad buyers were uncomfortable with the subject matter. Advertising next to jokes about the illegal private videos just seemed too risky. Not that the network could afford to take any risks at the time. This seemed pretty much like an episode that has been graveyard. There was no announcement. There was no statement. It just vanished. It never aired in the U.S., and not for more than a decade was it ever included in syndication, home video release, or streaming lineup. For a long time, only rumors were going around. Fans who knew of the missing episode could not find it anywhere. Some thought it was never completed. Others believed it to be completely destroyed. But the truth was that it was in fact complete, it just vanishes. While the jokes might feel tame by today's standards, outrageous in 1989, it wasn't just edgy, it was dangerous. For it did not advocate indecency, but it played with something too close to real-world anxiety. Being filmed with consent, exposing your intimate life, and losing control of your own privacy. What terrified the network wasn't just what aired, it was what could have happened if they showed it. 3. A sitcom caught in a culture war by 1989, Married with Children had become a battleground, not just for television critics, but for moral crusaders, watchdog groups, and outraged viewers who saw it as a symptom of America's cultural decay. The show's crude humor, sexual innuendo, and unapologetic cynicism were already pushing limits. But one viewer's angry letter would ignite a full-scale public campaign that ultimately helped doom the episode, I'll See You in Court. That viewer was Terry Ricalta, a Michigan housewife and mother of 4 who stumbled upon an episode while her children were watching television. The episode in question wasn't even I'll See You in Court. It was a different installment featuring the Bundy's usual cocktail of sexual jokes and irreverent banter. But what Ricalta saw horrified her. She believes the show undermines traditional family values, glamorizes immorality, and corrupts young minds. She didn't just change the channel. She declared war. Ricalta launched a grassroots boycott effort by penning letters to Fox's sponsors, encouraging them to pull advertisements for Married with Children. Astonishingly, it worked. Some of the biggest corporations, including Kellogg's and Coca-Cola, pulled the show's ad because of her efforts. The controversy soon made headlines nationwide. Television news channels ran stories about her crusade, and conservative commentators even defended her cause. What began with personal outrage evolved into a cultural crusade that targeted not only Married with Children, but the very definition of what was permissible on television. Fox suddenly found itself on its heels. The network had positioned itself as daring, new, and irreverent because it still had to fight for eyeballs against ABC, NBC, and CBS.